She did shatter the sky. Everyone would have noticed that. Yeah, a bit weird.
Yeah.
Jess, we got the...
There was another thing we'll talk about a little bit later, but there's another inconsistency that just kind of goes to show, this is maybe... The one I'm thinking about isn't an inconsistency per se. It does raise the question, does canon exist? Is it possible to have canon in a video game universe?
What?
Because when developers say one thing and then they say another thing, but two developers are saying different things, what's the truth of it all?
I don't even know what you're talking about, so that seems spicy.
Yeah, we're talking about Silvermoon.
What?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, it was there.
Yeah. No, it basically Silvermoon. Actually, I'll just ask, what color was Silvermoon before the Blood Elves?
I'm going to assume it was some sort of bluish color because that's what the... Was there blue floating around for them in Warcraft 3, or am I just very tired and old?
Yep. All the high elves, all obviously, the color of blue, the kind of cyan colors are all there.
Yeah.
According to Sylvanas, it was always red and gold.
Interesting.
Also, according to the legendary ring of the Crown Jewel of Silvermoon from Legion, it was always red as well. But Heroes of the Storm says it was blue.
Yeah, but Christie wrote the book in her lunch break.
Not literally true, but effectively.
No, that's actually a really weird thing with how the book came out. Christie was doing work in the book like in her personal time.
Yep.
So
yeah, we might go through that later, but it
seems weird. Seems really weird. I don't know. I'm kind of uncomfortable with the idea. But that said, I mean, who knows? And don't want to speculate too much.
Yeah,
the book's quite funny because the book's actually great. It has a few issues, but like overall, it seems like a pretty great book. Basically, Jared's, because he's going through the book now, and he basically said that his review of the book is that he's really enjoying it, and Christie Golden is deadlifting the entire WoW story.
Yeah.
And basically, it feels like that.
I mean, I really do think this is expressly trying to fix the narrative and make Sylvanas make sense and give us the definitive account of what she actually thought. And that is one thing that is important. There's been some people who have seen like her warped perspective of things when she still had a fractured soul. And then they've been angry about that because it doesn't match reality, or it doesn't match a reasonable person's view in events. And it's like, yeah, this is from her point of view. Imagine if you were reading like a Game of Thrones or something, and just every character was just speaking lines of objective truth, right? So anyway, the actual novel, per Jared's actually pretty great. And especially I've seen loads of people talk about the first third, the stuff that's like her childhood and growing up and all of that stuff. That's like basically people saying, if it was all like this would be my favorite book in the Warcraft books. Right? So that's like super high praise. I think for some people though, it does get a little bit, when it gets into the Shadowlands lore, they start to get a bit disconnected because that's obviously tied to the less, popular stuff. That's happened. But there's crazy things that happen, like actually a conversation with Zovaal.
Yep, where he explains his motivation.
So let's take a look at this. I am Zovaal. Before I was the jailer of this place, I reigned over the realms of death from the precipice of eternity itself. I stood as arbiter over every mortal soul whose brief flicker of life had sputtered out. In an instant, I knew the entirety of their existence, and time after time, do you know what I saw? Fragile beings left to the fickle whims of fate. Their world, their kin, whether they were wise or simple, hale or sickly, these things were forced upon them. From the moment they drew their first breath until they exhaled their last, their choice was never theirs. And when their lives ended, it was my duty to decide their soul's fate for all eternity. From its conception to execution, and throughout all that has been and is, the design is gravely, cruelly, and worst of all, indifferently flawed. Here's the thing.
Makes sense.
He is, I think, completely right. Everything he said there's right.
Yeah.
The Shadowlands as a conception is horrible.
Yeah. Well, the only part of that I would vaguely disagree with is the fragile beings left to the fickle whims of fate, where that's like,
Okay,
obviously that's his opinion from what he's seen, where he's like, okay, well, more people have had things happen to them because of reasons out of their control. So that's like a maybe not super 100%, but yeah, the fact that the whole Shadowlands is designed to go, oh, well, you serve a purpose because you're an anima generating machine for this flavor of color. There you go. Oh, you're a wild god. Into the wild god hole you go, no matter what you think. Oh, you're the sinner, Reverend. That stuff all fair. Like,
yeah. I dared to defy the will of the makers. I sought to break their flawed design to replace it with a better one, and for this, my own kin condemned me to this unjust fate. Now, here's the thing. This isn't actually what he thinks.
no.
Or what he's doing. This is just him trying to convince Sylvanas. Now, it does so happen, he probably does think all of these things, and these are probably what made him disillusioned. And hopefully this is not a case of, the book and the game are a little bit at odds, because ostensibly he does all the things that he does for, to stop what is to come, whatever that may be, right? So there's a bigger bad, that's a big threat that he's trying to prepare us all for, apparently. But for motivation, like, this whole thing makes sense. And, regardless of your opinion of fate, a being that sees the entirety of someone's life in an instant is certainly going to see things a bit more like that. So this is great. And why is this not in the game? When did Christie write these lines? Could we not have found a way to put them in the game somehow?
About 7:30 a.m. somewhere around the middle of August, probably last year, after a cup of coffee and a biscuit. Like, I don't know. It's so awkward that this is just like, this is all probably, they read it, went, well, what would Zovaal have said to Sylvanas in Edge of Night? This? Okay, sweet. But they went, well, they never thought to put this in the game because they were like, oh shit. Well, we don't have any budget. We have to cut a patch. I mean, sorry, this is the plan the whole time. This is the plan the whole time. And the cinematic at the end says Zovaal had believed in nothing and just wanted to help because the cause was undivided, etc., etc.
Yeah, so it's funny because, like, this is all, completely, good dialogue, makes sense, good motivations.
This is basically almost like a perfect example of how someone who has this job would ultimately come to that conclusion and go, well, yeah. And then you have an interesting philosophical discussion to deal with about death and about the design of it. And yep.
Yeah.
Fine.
And then
great.
how does him being punished for questioning the orthodoxy twist him into a more villainous character?
Yep.
That's all stuff that could have been part of Zovaal being a great villain.
Yeah, like, how expensive was his voice actor? Because obviously, Raziel there saying, why does Zovaal in book talk in complete conversations while Zovaal in game says one-liners? Yeah, the VA was on a per line basis maybe, and wasn't able to say from its conception to execution and throughout all that has been, and the design is gravely, cruelly, and worst of all, indifferently flawed. Imagine that at the start of the expansion instead of pitiful mortals.
Well, that's the thing. It feels like they're written by completely different people, and that's probably literally true. But that's a really big failing because your characters need to speak in their voice, not just the voice of the person who happened to be writing them that day on that project. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and we've even had some of that. There's two people writing The Pale Beyond. Yep, Thomas and Kevin. Mm-hmm. Now it's a good thing that they've known each other for a very long time. Yeah. But they have to make sure that whenever one of them writes one character and the other one writes that character, that they are still the same character. And you have to get that right, or else your characters are inconsistent. So it's funny. So there's that, right? To move on to another little thing, this is the bit that caught you. We don't actually know what the color of Silvermoon is anymore. Yep. So Silvermoon was apparently always crimson and gold, according to Sylvanas in this book. Yep. And this is, great for Valorant on Twitter and Kelvern. Yeah, on the putting this together. Yep. So the high elf colors in War 3 are blue and cyan, even in War 3 Reforged. Yep. In Chronicle, we see and man, that art is so nice. Yep, we see the same thing.
Yeah, the blue crystals and the cyan tops. Yep.
Now the comic shows red and gold.
Yep. But it also shows fel crystals at its founding, which is definitely not true.
So the comic got a bit loopy, and that's also kind of old content.
Yep. Here's the storm.
Here's the storm.
Blue.
Correct. Right, as it should be.
Yep. So one of the things is
what color is it?
Yeah. So the thing is that Silvermoon was rebuilt by Kelthus and his crew afterwards. They used magic to rebuild it after it was destroyed. Yeah. In Warcraft 3 in the Invasion, etc. Obviously, they couldn't heal the Dead Scar. That's why it's the Dead Scar and stuff, and why only some of it's rebuilt. But it was rebuilt red and gold because Blood Elves. They took on the color mantle because the blood of our people. We're the Blood Elves. We're no longer the Keldarai. We're now the Sindarai. All blood, all gold. Obviously, those are also the colors of the Sunstriders. Obviously, Dathramar set it up first, and Kelthus was his descendant. But it's that idea of there's just conflicting reports, and we have no official source for what's what anymore. So it's like, which is right? What color was Silvermoon before the Blood Elves?
And, like,
there is conflicting in multiple forms of things that are considered canon. There are conflict, so canon doesn't exist for that specific answer.
Yeah, like we know they switched. Chat. It's just that it seems to be claiming that before they switched, it was also red.
Yeah,
That's the bit that doesn't make sense.
So in the book, Sylvanas says it was crimson and gold as she remembered it when she was young, but obviously, look at the Hots one. It was blue when she was there. That was the color they went with.
Because, well, there she is, and it's blue.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing. Where like basically there's no real canon. Someone made mistakes somewhere, and as a result, we don't have a sense of canon. And because especially after exploring Azeroth, Kalimdor came with was it 1,000 years ago mistake instead of 10,000 years? You kind of look and go, how do we know what's canon when we get differing sources all the time?
There's official art of Asternian, the founder, and in that official art, it's red and gold.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the Chronicles official art of it being blue and cyan. Warcraft 3's canon enough.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it's chaos. Now, there's another very strange thing. So after she kills Sarfang, 3 hours later, she's in Ice Crown.
A few hours, I think.
A few hours later, she's in Ice Crown, taking out Bolvar. Now, that means that the events of patch 8.3 and the events of Shadows Rising took place within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Now, considering that Matthias Shaw had to go, even just travel from Stormwind to Zandalar, this is impossible. So that's just a flat out big inconsistency. Yep. And then there's even funny things like, it emerged that so basically Christie is writing this book, obviously for Blizzard, but it's a book deal with a publisher.
Yeah.
So she's actually doing research and stuff for this book outside of work hours.
What she said to Blizzard Watch in an interview about it was that all of the book's research and writing was done outside of her official duties at Blizzard, because she works at Blizzard, but she would wake up and write, as she always does for all of her other projects, would wake up and write before work in the morning. Then she would have meetings at Blizzard to discuss the book itself, but they would be on her lunch break because they're not part of her official Blizzard job, which is senior writer.
Well, in that case, it's what does she write? Because evidently she doesn't write a lot of the in-game stuff in World of Warcraft. And cut her some slack. She's writing your book. What?
Yeah,
I thought that was so crazy.
Yeah,
that was so crazy. How is this not part of her Blizzard job? I understand, but is it not hey, well, obviously we're gonna. I have to imagine that they scaled her duties back so she could write this book. I have to imagine that would be crazy. If
I would hope so. Yeah, but that's why I'm not taking any of this there's problems with stuff. So attacks on how they're doing. It's just a case of it's always leadership is not allowed time to make this happen, or there's something with the process that's wrong. Obviously, people make mistakes, and that's fair enough. But it's man, it's just brutal that seems to be the reality of the book. And you're well, this book is doing so much of, as Thing would say, as...
It's fell off my chair.
Nice one.
Platinum Wow, hello, pointed out that in the Shattered Legacy cinematic, it's also blue in the past.
But it's red in the past in the Warbringer, Sylvanas.
This is the whole saga of Charlemagne. Charlemagne was just changing colors just all the time. And I think they finally settled on the real colors of Charlemagne. Consistencies. Fun.
Yeah. I can't believe I didn't think about Shattered Legacies. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's because we didn't experience it in game. It felt like a little marketing thing.
Oh, yeah.
Released.
Yeah, I can see that there. God damn. Nice.
Wild.